In today's fast-paced world, one of the most popular beverages is one that keeps people energized and moving forward: coffee. So how do you make coffee look more appealing for discerning consumers? Well, there's coffee art. It's a painting technique that is not easy for baristas to master. But when done properly, it is the ultimate blend between performance and design. Can the look of coffee be an important choice for people?
I love it when my coffee looks pretty.
Coffee art is good. It's creative, it's fun to look at.
Yeah, I really love coffee art.
Coffee art's cool. I like all the patterns they can make.
There are two main types of coffee art: free pouring and etching. The two most common forms of poured latte art are a heart shape and the rosetta, which resembles a fern. Hearts are simpler and more common in macchiatos, while rosettas are more complex and more common in lattes. An etching is a technique ranging from simple geometric shape to complicated drawings, such as cross-hatched patterns, animals, and flowers, generally performed with a thermometer. Etched latte art has a shorter lifespan than free poured latte art.
And we do tell people that the barista is there putting on a show and is part of the entertainment for people that come in. So, and of course part of the show too is the communication between the barista and the customer and discussing whatever it might be about the show you're going to tonight or what you did last night.
And for coffee addicts, there is even courses on how to smell, taste, and appreciate coffee. It's called sensory development training. It is for people in the coffee industry, including coffee roasters, green bean buyers, brokers, and baristas.
It's important that the coffee should look as good as it tastes, but it has to taste good. The flavour, that's the most important element. So the sensory development covers a number of different skills. It's an understanding of what's happening with your tongue, and that's referencing a number of different sorts of products to actually engage the tongue and get those messages nice and clear. So then we go through and we look at a standard set of solutions of different concentration of sugar, of acetic acid and of salt, and make sure people can identify the different levels of the strength of those. Then we start blending them, and so you take 2 parts of a sugar and 1 part of an acid into one solution and sip that to try and identify what that ratio is.
And while it's important for baristas to have highly developed taste buds, not many have the time or interest to do such a course.
Yeah, look, they're very important. I mean, anything, if you're in the coffee industry, and no matter what part of the industry you're in, you need to educate yourself to become better at what you do. And if you're in that kind of sensory area, then the more courses you can do in that area, the better you'll become. If I was running a coffee shop, would I go and do that course? There's probably other ones I'd do before that, but that's definitely a course I'd want to do at some point, and I think anyone should do that course. You never stop learning about coffee, so as a person who enjoys coffee, I want to try different coffees, so I'm always on the search out for the next, the next good cafe, or the next good coffee, or the next great cafe, and the next great coffee.
The best part of being a barista is being able to work with coffee.
The best thing about being a barista is talking to the girls.
Do all baristas know what they're doing? No, because they're trained to make coffee. So they become espresso operators. And anyone can be an espresso operator. You just push the button and stuff comes out. The barista is a person who actually engages with the coffee and changes the way it tastes.
The coffee consumption in cafes has increased by 65% over the last 10 years. And while the coffee aficionados argue about art and odor, most Australians still drink instant coffee.
We would never have had the Renaissance without coffee houses. That's what coffee houses provide. They provide a place where people sit around and talk, discuss. They talk about life, death and the cosmos, politics.
I think from a business point of view, there's more people getting into the coffee business, trying to create the next great cafe. I think the other thing is it's a social thing as well. Often you'll, if you're working or at university, you'll say, let's meet in the coffee shop. And in some ways, the coffee shops replace the pub as a meeting place now, especially as people don't or drink less during the day probably than they did in the 1980s, for example.
In France, the seats in the street face the street. In Australia, the seats in the street face each other. We like to talk and be seen. The French like to be seen whilst they're talking. Big difference between Sydney and Melbourne is we often describe Sydney as being a coffee society and Melbourne as being a cafe society. One of the trends is going to be an increase in making fresh coffee.
As Australians drink more than 1 billion cups of Joe each year, that's a lot of powdered caffeine.